All good? Well, Kev, we're here at the Orium filming episode 5 of the Changing Room Chat. We're back on side. Firstly, thanks very much for coming. Really appreciate it. And I just want to kind of get started on a question that everybody asks each other every day, but we never really listen to the answer. We always kind of tend to say it, and then then we talk about ourselves. But how are you?
Yeah, I'm in a good place. Certainly had a sort of roller coaster ride over the last few years since leaving football. And like you say, probably I'm one of these guys that probably buried their head in the sand a wee bit with and my reply would normally just be, I'm all right. But deep down, there was times when it wasn't. But I'm happy to say, like, back on track now, feeling good, and life's sort of all straight and narrow now. Everything's on track. So yeah, it's like you say, it's not an issue that, especially as a man, and even in the football environment as well, where you want to open up about sort of struggling and things like that. Certainly for me, it wasn't something I did. Sort of bottled everything up when I was in my sort of darker times. But thankfully came through them, and hopefully my experiences can help anybody going through similar things.
Just what you said there at the start about the last couple of years, was it making that transition from playing football to then going into the kind of real world, as we say, like trying to find what's next?
Yeah, definitely. It was strange. I went into doing a wee bit of artwork, which I did at school, which I enjoyed, but it was pretty isolating. I came from an environment where you're in with your teammates week in, week out. You always got people around you, and I think that's something I missed massively. Having that sort of camaraderie and the sort of team spirit that you get from being in the changing room. From that to going into sort of an isolated environment where I was doing painting myself and I was in my own house as well, so I wasn't even getting out of the house really. And yes, I suffered for that, I think, a wee bit. I tried to get back involved in coaching, but there wasn't really anything in full time, which again, in Scotland, I think you're limited to sort of your area, and if there's nothing there, then it's pretty difficult. I think with the financial incentives down south, there's a lot more money goes into academies and things like that, and there's a lot more jobs in terms of full time. It was something that probably had a couple of offers from down south, but because I'd moved back up to Scotland and that as well, I was wanting to sort of grow some roots back up, because my kids had moved around a lot as well, so it was difficult. I couldn't find anything in football. Like I say, isolated myself a bit, and then from there I spiralled into a bit of depression really. I think struggled badly for the first few years. Probably turned to alcohol a bit as well, more than I enjoyed the drink when I played. But for me, it became a bit of a crux in terms of just dealing with things. I was probably, my weekends were starting on a Thursday all of a sudden, with alcohol and things like that, and got myself in a bit of a mess. But sort of from that, came through that, obviously with the help Back Onside as well. They were brilliant with us. Gave us a lot of support, certainly in my darker moments. They were always there, and they were always the first people on the phone, to be honest with you. And through that, if they've came out the other end, it's not been easy, and there's certainly times when it can, it still takes its toll at times, but I've came out the other end now, and hopefully my experiences, hopefully be able to share those experiences and how I've dealt with them and how things have improved, can give anybody in my situation either a wee bit of friendly advice or anything sort of help that I can give through talking about it, because there's one thing I never ever talked about any of the sort of things I was going through. It was a case of deal with it myself, and then but I know from experience that that's not the right way to go about things. But like I say, got through all this, and I've obviously sort of tried to share my story. Whether that helps anybody, I hope it does. I hope either it helps somebody who's maybe bottling things up to come out and either look for help, because it's not a sign of weakness going through something like this as well. It's anybody, whether it be footballers or any walk of life, somebody, they can go through similar things under slightly different circumstances, but everybody should speak when they're struggling.
I think that's the thing, is making it known that, it's no weakness. Everyone goes through tough times in their life, whether it's through work or relationships or, like you say, addiction or things like that. So we're all human beings, so it's making it that, it's no weakness, it's actually a strength to say, you know what, I need a wee bit of help here with this. Just going back, like, throughout your career, so you were obviously at Aberdeen for was it 5 or 6 years?
Yeah, I think we finished 7 years. It was from youth team all the way up to when I left. I think it was about seven years I'd been at Aberdeen. Came through youth ranks. Pretty successful team with likes Darren Young, Derek Young, Darren Mackey, Chris Clark, Michael Hart, Russell Duncan. All them boys went on to play full time, which is
Quite rare.
Yeah, it's rare. We had like a really good squad of boys. We ended up, I think we won the league. Went on to win. I think we were the last Aberdeen to win the Youth Cup. So it was a strong team. It was weird. I moved away from home. It was a tough environment. But I think that stood me in good stead for my football career in terms of, they ended up moving around a little bit towards the end. I always, I settled in usually pretty quickly into other sort of squads I'd been in. So, yeah, from that, from a good sort of environment to play football, it was at Aberdeen, and good sort of, like I said, that camaraderie. It's weird from the first day you go on as a footballer. I don't think your mentality changes even how old you get.
It's just the same.
Stay in that sort of school. It's almost like a school kid environment where you're almost, you might be 35 and you're mixing with 19-year-old boys in the changing room, and it's still got that sort of vibe about the place. It's one thing I think I missed more than anything. It's having that sort of, when you're having that bad day, you could come in the changing room and you could pick yourself up with having a bit of, the characters around the changing room can lift you. I think that's something that I miss certainly when I stopped playing.
So you then went from Aberdeen on to Cardiff?
Yeah, I moved when I was about 23, I think it was, moved to Cardiff, and that was obviously the first time I'd moved clubs. And Cardiff were a sort of up-and-coming club. They were they had a good basis of a team. The training ground and everything was horrendous. I remember actually going down and they showed me all the plans that they had for the club, the new stadium, new training ground.
They always do that, don't they? They show you all the new plans.
If you fair it out,
5 years later, nothing's been done yet.
It's meant to be happening a year later, but it did actually happen about 5 years later. They got the new stadium, new training ground. It was Sam Haman who was in charge of them at the time. He was a funny guy, because I remember going to shake his hand and it was a double high five. It was a double high five, and then got us in a headlock.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Started going, Kevy baby, you hope you're signing the day. So
that's amazing.
He was a character. If you Google Sam Haman, you'll see him. He ran on the pitch when Cardiff played Leeds. He was eccentric. And he was a part of the sort of crazy gang at Wimbledon. So he used to put in the small print of contracts that you had to eat ram's bollocks and everything. So you had to watch when you signed the contract, in case you had that in it, because he would make you do it. Because when I signed, we did it pretty sharp, and even my agent was like, I might just double check to make sure he's not putting in daft in there, because
something crazy,
something daft. But no, that was a weird environment. The fans were brilliant to me, see, from the day I walked in there, because I was sort of like all or nothing. I was like, I played with a lot better footballers around us, but I was always the workhorse who did the sort of donkey work. So that was sort of my game, just getting up and down the park and, you know, getting in. And I think that sort of fan base he took to me.
Was it 9 years?
Yeah, stayed down there for 9 years. My kids were brought up in Wales. It was good. I was thinking of maybe staying in Wales when I finished with football, or heading back down there, just because of that sort of environment. That was really, it's one thing I missed as well. I had a really probably settled environment down in Wales, but just to be closer to family, ended up, when I did finish, I ended up coming back up to Scotland. But the fans were always brilliant to me, and every time I go down now, they're always, you know, the fan base has always been brilliant to me. They've got a song that involves the fans' wives. I won't go into detail, but it's a good song, but it's pretty graphic.
Have you been back? Didn't you?
Yeah, I go down every now and again. I try to get down to games, but now that I'm back involved in football, it's been difficult recently. But when I think the last time I went down was to get engaged to my girlfriend. I ended up popping the question when I was down Cardiff, because there are a lot of good memories down there.
Mm-hmm.
And we went down for the weekend, so I ended up thankfully said yes, and then so it was ended up a good weekend.
The Cardiff has got a lot of good memories.
Yeah, a lot of good memories in Cardiff. Obviously, my kids, 2 boys growing up there, and probably my most successful spell as a footballer in terms of how I was playing, and you know, reached the FA Cup final, reached the League Cup final, and got promoted. Played in the Premier League with Cardiff, which, you know, that was what I dreamt of going down there, was to try and get that promotion. It took a lot longer and by the end I was hitting 30 when I was playing in the Premier League, which, to be honest with you, I think my best days were probably when I was about 25, 26. So probably missed my prime in terms of getting a wee chance at playing Premier League football, but I'm still proud that I managed to, you know, get to that league and get some minutes under my belt in the Premier League.
So when you left Cardiff, what was the journey after that? Was it?
I went to Wigan. I went on loan to Bolton while I was at Cardiff the last season. I just wasn't really getting involved under Solskjaer. So
Solskjaer was the manager?
Yeah, Solskjaer came in.
Like then?
He was all right. He was a good coach. But I don't know what it was. Just he struggled. I just thought he struggled to be a man management type. He didn't really speak to anybody. And when he did speak to you, it was always in a pretty weird environment. I remember actually getting a pre-match meal, chicken and beans. I was just putting that on my plate, and he basically tapped us on the shoulder and to tell us I wasn't going to be in the team. So, while I was getting my chicken and beans, so just took a couple of extra scoops of beans. And
why is it always? There's always something that happens at pre-match, isn't there? Where,
but it was weird. It was, you know, it was kind of, he was one of these characters who he always sprung you. He just came out of nowhere, and then he would tell you something that you'd think would be for someone for a chat in the changing room or chat away for someone. But he was a bit like, I think he took a lot of things from Sir Alex Ferguson in terms of, he used to say to boys, you're not going to play this week, but we need you for this game.
right?
Which I think Sir Alex Ferguson did with a couple of players, but I think with a Man United squad, having that massive squad, you would probably have to do that. But with our squad, I think you just put your best team out.
I think it's maybe different as well when that's Alex Ferguson. So he's like a god, isn't he, amongst in football and in terms of management. Like, he can get away with.
Yeah, it was weird. And then obviously to see him then going into Man United a couple of seasons later, I think there was a few boys that didn't particularly like Ole, but I thought he was a decent coach. He just, I think he just was finding his feet in terms of his coaching. It's probably a big job to come into a team who are struggling in the Premier League without having massive. He didn't have really any experience in the Premier League apart playing or being at that side of the table. So it was tough for him. He tried to get us playing football in a team that would be pretty direct, but pretty, he just started saying, right, we're going to play out from the back. And
very difficult to do unless you've got the players.
That's the thing. We didn't have the players. I don't think we had the players. He was trying to bring guys in to do that. But by this time we were just sat above the relegation zone, and he was wanting us to just suddenly start playing free-flowing football. We were safe when he came in.
Read the room a wee bit.
Yeah, like we were safe when he came in, albeit by a couple of points. But when he did come in, it was all about playing football, getting from the back and stuff. And we tried to work on a few things. Even I was like, we're not playing our strengths here.
I always think with that anyway, that takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
That takes time on the training pitch. Like you can't come in no matter what level you're at, mid-season and start looking to proper playing it for the back. Like
I must admit, like the boys tried to take that, and they tried everything in terms of taking everything in and that, but it didn't suit us. I remember actually we signed the guy Gary Medell.
That's the midfielder.
Yeah, Chilean guy, really nice guy, bit of a head case. But he was a really good footballer, and he came into ours. Like, I think we signed the wrong players as well when we got promoted. We're a bit of a no-nonsense team. We hit teams on the break. We're pretty solid at the back. And suddenly we've got this guy who's wanting to take the ball off the keeper and everything, and want to take the ball off the defence. He just kept shouting, pass. We had two pretty rigid centre-halves, Mark Hudson, Ben Turner, who they'll admit to themselves, they're decent footballers, but they're not going to be popping it around. No, there's no other strength to be popping things around, and Gary's coming and taking the ball off them, passing it back to them, and then they're suddenly like
putting them in uncomfortable positions.
Yeah, uncomfortable positions. So it was quite funny because I remember Ben Turner said, "Gary, we don't do that here, mate. It's just like, we don't do this.
Stop coming back.
Stop coming back here and doing that. This is not what we do here." Right? We put in the channel. That's what Ben was like. That ball goes from here to there.
Well, everybody needs to be on the same page with that. Like,
but that was like we weren't a great football. The team that got promoted, the Cardiff team, we weren't a brilliant football team, but we had 2 or 3 boys within the squad who could change a game. Peter Whittingham,
he's quality, left-footed.
Bellamy, and you had like Fraser Campbell came in at Christmas, and he probably got us over the line. He was just a lone striker who could create goals for himself, and in the final third he was different class. Got a lot of goals towards the end of the season with like Craig Conway, guys like that who were workhorses. Craig Noon as well, workhorse. So it was a mad experience. It took longer than I thought we would do to get promoted. We had a couple of playoff disasters really. We got beat twice in the semis, and then we got beat in the final, that was probably my lowest point, getting beat in that playoff final to Blackpool. That was tough. That took a while to get over that. We got to the playoffs the following season, and I think we lost to Reading in the semis. But I got Player of the Year that season. That was one thing I was like, I remember fondly about that season. Actually, I was playing centre half.
Really?
Yeah. That was my position growing up. I was a centre half. Right. Obviously not big enough or not strong enough, so I got put as a fullback, and it seemed to work at Aberdeen because I didn't play a lot of football when I was younger until I got into the first team. Right. Quite bizarre. Played fullback probably a handful of times before I actually got in the first team. So it was weird. I got Player of the Year playing centre half for Cardiff in the Championship.
Wow.
So it was weird.
You wouldn't think that as well.
No,
like when I think about your career, I see a right back getting up and down. A centre half.
I played alongside somebody. We just had an understanding where he just won everything, and I just pick up scraps. And there's one thing about my game, I was good at reading things, so I just played like a sweeper, an old-fashioned sweeper. Used to pick things up and then I would start things going, and then kept it pretty simple. But I had a good season that season.
So see when you left Cardiff and then you go into Wigan?
I moved up to Bolton for a season on loan. It was weird. I wasn't getting a sniff of any sort of football. And it was Dougie Friedman who was in charge. I think he phoned Cardiff asking about my availability. I got pulled in, and I was like, so I'm in an an really whether to go, because I loved it at Cardiff, didn't really want to go, but I needed to play, so I went up. It was only going to be, I think it was a couple of months, so I said, yeah, I'll go up. And I got back playing. I was doing really well actually. They were sitting bottom of the league when I came, and we went on a 9 unbeaten game run.
Is this in a championship?
This was in the championship, and then we managed to get away from the danger zone. But then I went back to Cardiff, and I was sat outside Malky's office. I was going to ask to go back out on loan because I enjoyed it. I actually thought, I'm getting back playing again, and it's maybe going to be probably the best thing for my career, just going back up, try and get back up to Bolton. Sat outside Malky Mackay's office, going to ask him to go on loan, and he said, no, they're in a meeting just now with the board. So ended up leaving, went home, switched on Sky Sports News. Malky Mackay has been sacked for Cardiff. So it was really weird. So went back into training the next day. The assistant was taking everything, and I thought to myself, I'm still going to try and get back up to Bolton. Went down to train. Right back at the time was a French lad who ended up getting injured, and his replacement went on the training park as well, got injured. I could see the two of them going up, basically. I was thinking to myself, there's no any more right backs.
There's no more right backs here.
So, next minute, it was a Friday, so the next minute I get called over. We had 10 minutes left of the session. Says, oh, come over and we need to train. I hadn't brought any of my stuff for travelling or anything like that to go to the game. We're playing Arsenal away.
Right.
So they just said, oh, you're going to get your stuff. We've not got any right backs. You're in the squad. So I nipped home, grabbed my gear, came back, jumped on the bus, drove through to Arsenal and played. Started the match against Arsenal. So that's the sort of thing that happens in football sometimes, with just the case a couple of boys getting injured, and then it was me back in the start 11 from me sitting outside an office the day before waiting to try and get back out on loan. I was suddenly playing in the Premier League. So it was
these are the things that people don't know that's happening at the time.
yeah, it's scary because yeah, like I'd had my bags were packed still to just go back after Bolton.
It's crazy, isn't it?
And I never had any, like I never turned up on the Friday. Obviously you turn up with your gear to travel. I was a jeans t-shirt and turned up for training. I didn't get on my trackies and that, and there was nobody else to play. And I was thinking maybe they'll move him to there to maybe no. But then woke up on the Saturday morning and showed us the team, and it was starting. So I was like,
how did the game go?
We lost 2-0. Honestly, we hung on to about 82 minutes. I think they scored the first goal 82 minutes, and we were getting barraged, to be honest with you. It was tough. It was a decent Arsenal team. I think Van Persie and that were playing.
And you've turned up on the Friday.
Yeah, I turned up.
Ready.
Nah.
You've been ready to go on the bus.
I played against the toughest opponent I've ever played against was that day against Santi Cazorla. Honestly, he's not quick or anything. He was sharp, but he wasn't. The one thing I had about us was a bit of pace. So when I've ever played him against pace, I was never really that worried. I thought, if he's going to bump it past us, I've got a good chance of getting back in. But whenever I played against somebody with he was the most two-footed player I'd ever. I remember somebody saying, "Show me inside," and I was like, "If I show him inside, he's just as good on his inside." So
he's the same with both feet.
Yeah, he was incredible. Honestly, I think I ended up obviously. I was speaking to you beforehand, and I needed a hip replacement. I'm sure it's kind of sad because he started the problems with my hip. I think because I was honestly I had to get unscrewed. The Emirates constantly.
I remember
there's a compilation of his best bits, and I think I actually feature him.
It's just you digging
into the chops his. He goes down the line, and I think he chops his. And goes to chop his back the other way. And I think I just see me just going.
You just feel the hip going. Wow.
But no, you see something special. It was just weird because it happened so quickly. And obviously, the reason I went down to Cardiff was to play in the Premier League. So all of a sudden, bang, I'm getting a chance. So that was special. I'd played there before in the cup, but it was good. It was a good atmosphere and. Yeah, so it was one of them, although we lost it was one of them games I look back at and think, I'm glad I experienced it, and look back at it as like, similar to the cup final, was one of them sort of moments in your career where you think, God, this is something I dreamt of when I was a kid, so for it to happen, it was pretty special.
So when you move on from Cardiff then, you're early 30s?
Yeah, I think it was about 31 maybe, when I moved up to Bolton, 32 maybe. I'd gone up for a season loan, which didn't quite work out really. Dougie Friedman, who brought us up, got sacked after about 5 or 6 weeks, and I picked up a hamstring injury, and then Neil Lennon came in. I played 1 game under him and didn't play again. I just came back for injury. I must admit I didn't play a great game, but I never ever got a chance after that. So I spent the whole season, I couldn't go on loan anywhere else. I had a clause in my contract where I couldn't go back.
Right.
It was weird. I was like in isolation sort of thing, and I struggled. I remember looking back in my career and thinking if there was any time or point where like mentally I wasn't in a great place, and that was at Bolton, to be honest with you. I struggled a wee bit there.
How did you cope with that then?
Probably didn't cope that well for a period of time, because I remember I get injured. I'd come back from a hamstring injury, played that 1 game, and I'd been totally isolated in terms of getting back in the team. I just wasn't getting a sniff. I remember training. I was lucky over the course of my career that I always played, or a new manager came in and I managed to get back in, or whoever didn't like us somehow they ended up getting the sack, or I ended up getting back in the team. But this was the longest period I'd been at the team without getting a look in, really. So it was tough. That was mentally pretty tough. And then I got an injury. I remember just doing sprints after a game, and I'd actually tweaked my hamstring in a weird place, and I really struggled to get back to that injury for a while. And I remember even then, probably I wasn't somebody that drank loads when I was playing, but at that period of time, I think to cope, I was drinking a lot more than I normally did. I found that as a bit of a crutch.
You think that was the start of maybe?
Probably looking back at it, maybe was a period of time where I probably should have really maybe started speaking to people there.
Yeah.
But like I said, as time went on, I ended up getting myself back into the team again, and it was just basically the last few months of the season. I got myself back in the team, and I'd started the game, 15 minutes into the game, a guy comes clattering into my leg, catches us about midway, and it was agony. It was horrendous. I remember standing up, felt something in my leg, like grind.
Yeah.
Ended up breaking my leg, but I didn't know that at the time. It was just fibula broke, so I could still put a bit of weight on my foot. And because I'd not played for ages, I'm still obviously thinking, I'm trying to play on.
You're trying to keep playing.
I'm like, oh, and I could see the sideline and that saying, what's wrong with you, sort of thing. I was like, there's something in my leg's gone. I don't know what it is. And anyway, I get stretchered off, go for an x-ray next day, broken leg. And this is me running out of contract. So I've got like a month left of the season. I've not played pretty much the whole season. I've got a broken leg. I'm out of contract. It was like, it was hell. So I go down and get my operation, get a plate put in. And then for that summer, I had to rehab myself, basically.
Did the club not give you any?
The physio who was, when he was there, he actually took his own time to come and help us, which was good. It was so weird. It was like, because I'd left Cardiff and it was on there on loan, I don't think any of them knew whose responsibility it was to look after it. So it ended up, because I was quite close to the physio at Bolton, they ended up looking after us probably more than they did at Cardiff. So I ended up doing my rehab myself, basically, and I had to go and find a club off the back of breaking my leg, which was tough. And I was basically just coming back as pre-season was started, because I remember speaking to a few clubs and saying, what happened to you towards the end of the season? I said, I broke my leg, but I'm just fighting to get back fit. So it was already sort of putting clubs off, trying to get back in. But it was Gary Caldwell messaged and said, what's happening, mate? I said, I've just come back for a broken leg, really. I need a pre-season under my belt. He said, I'll come and on loan come and have a trial for a week or two, just to sort of prove your fitness. And to be honest with you, it probably needed another 3 or 4 weeks before I was back training. But because it was an opportunity to go and get back in. I thought, you know, and I was getting a wee bit of bother with the plate in my leg as well, so it was a nightmare. I was popping painkillers and everything just to go on trial for 2 weeks to try and get a contract. But I ended up, I did well. I did really well, played well, and the trial games I had, they offered us a year sort of thing. It was, the contract was based on us playing, really.
I always think even with year contracts, it's not really a year, is it? It's like 6 months, and when you get to January, you're kind of worrying already.
You're back in the same boat. I was always lucky at Cardiff. I always said to I was quite close with Dave Jones. I said, I'd rather get my contract sorted out early, and then I've got a few years under my belt where I could just concentrate on football. I always said that to him. He was good with that. He was always probably about 18 months. He looked to extend it maybe a couple of years every time. That's probably how I ended up staying at Cardiff. So I always was happy. Wherever I was happy, I always wanted to, I wasn't always looking to move. But with like you say, the 1 year contracts is hard. You've got like constantly, you've got that in the back of your mind that, you know, you're one injury away from, you know, being, you know, like the position I was in, really, where I'm rehabbing myself through the summer to try and find a club sort of coming back from injury. It's difficult.
These are the things that people don't see that goes on.
Nah, it's not something that, you know, that even like gym sessions yourself, just like having to rehab yourself, it's pretty isolating. It's not really, it's not a nice environment when you get injured. It's one thing I struggled with a wee bit when I was injured. Certainly the long-term injuries were tough. You actually become quite close to the physio. I know it's, but it's one of them things where you latch on to who you're bonding with. Basically, you see them every single day. So it's actually, the physio actually has quite an important role in the club as well to keep guys, you know, probably have to do with mental health as well. I would say a lot of physios would probably benefit from getting some training in sort of mental health, because you do find that footballers struggle when they're injured. It's quite, like I say, isolating. You don't feel part of it, sort of thing. That's what happened sort of towards the end of my career. With injuries I sort of picked up, I don't think that helped mentally as well. Coming out of football off the back of injury after injury after injury, it wasn't really, you know, it was quite an isolating time. And it was, I didn't finish football on my terms, sort of thing as well. You know, I didn't think, yeah, that's me, I've enjoyed it, bang. It was a case of injury. And my body just went, enough's enough. And I was like, and by this time, I didn't have the stomach to do another rehab. So I was just like, that's me.
Can't do it anymore.
Nah. As much as I wanted to, it was just, I was thinking to myself, I can't go through having to go to the gym, going to do all these sessions. I remember actually at Cardiff doing a pool session at like 7 a.m, going to the gym, and then that was when everybody else was coming in after that, and then you would go do your physio stuff, and then you would have another 2 sessions. It was like being injured wasn't enjoyable. Certainly never enjoyed it. I know a few of my mates were like, oh, you're injured, just be messing, just arsing about. I was like, it's not like that at all.
It's not like that now, because like you're saying there about the contracts as well, if you're injured and your contract's, you know, dwindling down, you've got a few months left, you're not thinking.
No, I'm thinking like, I might be out of job here. Or, you know, your career could stall, you know. It's like it only takes like 6 months. 6 month period is massive in football. It's crazy. Your form dips, you come back from injury, you might find yourself at a club that you maybe stepped down to. That's where you see a lot of guys who get injured that they don't deal with it correctly, then you know, their careers could sort of slide. I think that with me towards it, like I was always lucky. I never had a lot of long-term injuries. I did have one, but I managed to get back from that pretty quick. And I had a manager who understood that I was still getting fit. I think some managers, you know, you sort of get shunted a wee bit sometimes when you're coming back from injury. But I think I had Dave Jones at the time, who had obviously seen us the few seasons before I'd got a bad injury, and he fed us back in slowly to the point where I ended up, you know, back in the first team fairly quick. Yeah, it does help having sometimes you get a relationship with a manager where they put a lot of trust in you, and I think that gets reciprocated as well. But you meet the opposite where the manager doesn't take you, which is fine, and it is tough when you're a player and you've got somebody who's not keen on you.
So you go from having this career where you're playing in the Premier League with Cardiff, you're playing against like the likes of Arsenal, the guys that you mentioned, and then when you hit early 30s, 31, 32, the injuries start to mount. Then it gets to a point of, like you said, 6 months in football is a long time. Like, you can be forgot about quite quickly. And then it gets to a point where you're maybe 32, 33, and then this is the point, I think, where a lot of guys kind of struggle with, where they go, what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
What do I do next? I can't live my life away from football, off the back of a year's contract and then worrying about what happens next.
Yeah, that was basically my circumstances. I had a season at Wigan where I tore my hamstring basically off the bone after about 4 or 5 games in, and it was near enough my season over. So it was weird. That season Wigan got promoted. We were in League One, and it was honestly a really good changing room. It was actually a good environment to be in, even though I was injured. It was probably the only time in my career where I enjoyed coming in when I was injured, because it was a really close-knit changing room, and it was weird. The physio's room was right off the changing room, so you've always seemed to feel like you were involved still. But it was weird. It was a good club. The fans were really good. It was everything about that club was run well. It was really. I enjoyed my time at Wigan. I thought, like, even for a small, in terms of fan base, they were always supportive of the team, and I've only got good things to say about that club, because they were really good with me as well. Even the fact that I was injured there for a long time, the fans were always good with me. But from there, it was a case of, again, getting to that end of the season that we're talking about, where I've not played a lot of football over the last couple of years, and now I'm looking for another club. And it was just through me knowing the goalkeeping coach Ryan Essen at Inverness. Ended up going up to Inverness for a season. He said, you need to come up and prove your fitness, which I know you'll not want to do. But so I went up for, I think it was 2 weeks. I was really fit. I'd worked really hard at Wigan. I couldn't get back in the team, but at least I was going up to Inverness fit.
Yeah.
That was the sort of last man standing in the bleep test. So I'd sort of proved there was no issues with fitness. So I had worked really hard to get fit. So I'd proved my fitness, sort of thing, and then I'd got back. I'd been playing centre half for Inverness. Something that in my head I thought I could maybe get a wee bit more life fit with. Could maybe prolong the career a wee bit playing centre half as well. So I was playing pretty well. And it was just, we'd played on AstroTurf on the Wednesday against Alloa in the cup game, and I remember just having tight calves. And we had a big game at the weekend on the Saturday, and I remember changing my footwear and everything. Something didn't feel right. Played the game against Ross County, I think it was. So it was a big derby game, and I had really tight calves. But I was one of these players. I thought, I'll just take a wee painkiller or whatever you have, and just kind of we'll get through these. I'll deal with the consequences afterwards. But looking back, shouldn't even played. Just there were a ball coming over my head, and going for a header, jumped up with, I can't remember the striker at the time, big striker, ended up jumping on my back as I was putting my foot back, and I've never felt pain like it, but I later found out that I ruptured my Achilles, but at the time it was excruciating. It was worse than a broken leg. And I think that was when I remember getting tested when I actually walked off, because I knew something was gone in my ankle, because my ankle was all over the place. And I remember just walking off thinking, I think that's me. I just thought, this is horrendous. I remember the physio squeezing, they do a test where you squeeze your calf, and I think your heel has to move up if your Achilles is intact. And he was like, nah, it's not moving. I think you've snapped your Achilles. And I know how bad I know, I've seen players finish their careers off of that. So at the age I was, and off the back of the 3 years, I was thinking to myself, you know,
What age were you at the time?
I would have been 33, wait, turned 34, I think, when it happened. So I was getting to that stage. I was fit. The thing was, I'd looked after myself, so I was a fit guy, but just the injuries had taken their toll. And off, I remember getting that one and thinking, I think that's me. It was weird. I thought, you know what, I got after a month of sort of feeling sorry for myself, I kind of just thought, no, I'll just try and get myself fit before the end of the season. Because it was in Inverness, I was actually away from my family for half the week, so I just pummeled the gym, pummeled the rehab, honestly, that you wouldn't, you ask any of the guys who were up there, they used to actually say, but like, you're like a man on a mission, just try and get fit.
I did nothing else but that.
But nothing else, there was nothing else there. So I ended up actually, I was never somebody who went in the gym as a player, but I found a wee bit of love for the gym after spending a bit of time up there myself, sort of thing. Just found something, got myself back probably a month before schedule, just through just hard work. But again, we'd end up getting relegated, and I was in and out of the team, and thought, you know what, I'll give it one more year. It was weird. I'd worked that hard to get myself fit, and we ended up getting relegated. I thought, I'll just try and give it another year, and I'll see what my body says. But I went away training with Aberdeen through Joe Lewis. I phoned Joe Lewis, who used to play at Cardiff when he was at Aberdeen, and he mentioned Derek McInnes, who actually was in a Scotland squad with. He just said, if you need somewhere to train, you can come in Aberdeen. I thought, oh, brilliant. We'll come in and train. And I trained really well. Actually, you know, I didn't look out of part in terms of the training. I thought, you know, maybe squeeze a bit more out the legs in. And they actually asked, they said, we've got a game against St Johnstone, because we're going into, I think they're playing in Europe, so we're in a wee bit earlier than the other team. So he said, come and play in the game. I said, they're perfect. So I came on for 20 minutes, and it was literally last minute of the 20 minutes was on the park. I went to slide for a tackle, and my heel got caught, and I just felt a wee pinch in my knee, and I didn't think anything of it, but as I was walking off, I was still feeling it a bit. Anyway, I went through to Glasgow for the night. It was my birthday, I think it was. And I remember just waking up the next day, my knee was twice the size, and I was just like, I can't do this. I just thought, I can't do this anymore. And that's like the next day I retired, I just said, that's it.
Straight away?
Straight away. I phoned Derek and said, because I think he was wanting me to come over at St Andrews and train. I said, like, my knee's twice the size. I'm not doing rehab again. I just can't do it. And I instantly retired. I said, I'm not doing this anymore.
What was your first step as soon as you retire? Like, did you have anything in place for?
Nothing at all, really, in terms of going to do. That's one thing I do regret, is not getting my coaching badges earlier. I left it till basically I stopped playing, because I think if I had them badges, maybe it built up my confidence as well to go and even like Inverness, like at Inverness, I tried to help out when I was injured, when I did my Achilles, tried to help out a wee bit with the youth team. It was Duncan Shearer was in charge, so I just kind of shadowed him just to see what he was doing and stuff, and try and pick up things. And I got a wee bit of a taste for it there, but just through the circumstances of having to leave Inverness and stuff like that. But I think if earlier in my career, if I maybe taken a wee bit of initiative and got my B licence, or just got something, other education. You know, you get a lot of time as a footballer, a lot of spare time, and I think you take it for granted. And certainly when I was playing, I just seen it as recovery time, but there's a lot of hours in the day where you could be doing something else. You could be actually maybe getting some sort of education out with football, or keeping your foot in football through doing the coaching or any sort of other things. There's plenty of jobs in football where it doesn't take kicking the ball, but it's one thing I didn't really I didn't use that time well enough, I don't think, and it wasn't till I stopped playing I thought, right, you better go and do this now.
What was your initial, see when you retire, you wake up, your knees
was funny because when it first happened, it was a relief. I thought, I can't do that again. It was like when I retired, it was a relief. I was like, I don't need to go in the swimming pool at 6 in the morning and have a jog around trying to do rehab, because it was soul destroying. So there was a wee bit of relief. I thought, right, I could just let this knee just get better. I think it's better.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't need to go in the gym every day. So there was a bit of relief like that. But I think once the initial sort of few months go past, and then you see everybody playing and you think, you know, it was kind of watching football from a side. I was itching to get back. It was like, you ended up playing junior football for a wee bit. Just probably to keep that.
Because you don't know anything else?
Nah, because I didn't really. So it was difficult. It was such a weird transition, because it probably hit me after I'd probably say about 6 months, when I was just kind of like, what am I doing? Don't really know what to do next. And that probably gives a wee shake to go and get my B licence, which I did. And then I got my B licence, and then I couldn't find anything full time. So I was kind of scrambling about, thinking, right, what am I going to do? And then I got part time with Dundee, doing the youth coaching. And there was a few things said where, if you do this, maybe work your way through, sort of thing. But then half the staff were sacked. It was tough. Again, I probably fell out of it a wee bit. That's probably when I was like, I think sort of, again, probably hit a bit of a depressive state, where I just had no motivation to do it. And I started isolating myself a wee bit in terms of, I stopped going to my coach, and I did, you know, we had 3 coaches, and I ended up just saying to them, like, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm going to call it a day. I spoke to Dundee. I said, like, I've got too much going on in my life, and just the way I was back then, I ended up having an impact on the relationship I was in, and in that, when that finished, I ended up going through probably a 1 or 2 year period where, you know, I was just eking my way through life, sort of thing, and just, you know, it's barely existing really. It was in like a sort of depressive state. Wasn't myself. Even my brother, who I'm probably closest with, was, you know, he was probably worried sick about the way it was. And I masked it quite well as well, with drinking and going out, just carrying on, but that was dying inside. It was really, really tough. And then it wasn't really till I seeked help that I sort of realised that, you know, I had problems. I probably buried my head in the sand for a long periods, but there probably came a point where it was just like,
how long did you think?
It was a couple of years, easily, just where I was, you know, dipped to sort of suicidal sort of thoughts, to, you know, it was horrendous. It was like such a horrible period. And it took me probably getting to the point where I'd basically, it was a bit of a cry for help, when I actually got to the stage where I thought, no, this is enough. I can't keep going sort of down this path. It was such a difficult time. I was under a lot of difficult circumstances, but at the same time, I think I should have reached out earlier. I probably let it get to the stage where it was beyond, like, I almost felt like it was beyond help. But I think beforehand, should have let everybody know what was going through my head. It was tough. It was tough. It was the toughest thing to do, was to tell somebody that sort of the things that are going on in your life and the feelings you have. You know, when you're at that stage where you're feeling suicidal, the last thing you want to do is talk about. But at the same time, if you find somebody you can confide in and you speak to, and it does help. It definitely does. Once I had that wee support network around us, who knew what was going on, they could see that, you know, I've got probably little traits that I do when I'm getting into that sort of mental mindset and being in that sort of place. I've managed to shake myself out of it on certain periods after, you know, I came out and spoke to people and I've got that network there. There's still times where it's you know, I do go back into that sort of regressiveness and going back the way. But with the help, even like, so, you know, Back Onside and family, friends as well, all massively important. Because I think when you're in that state of mind, I don't think you can see a better period in your life. All you see is all the negative things. I don't think you don't project forward and think, you know, this going to turn out okay, everything will get better. You just focus on the feelings you're having and the negatives and how things could get worse. I think that's what goes on in your head at that period in time. And for me, I just didn't see anything further on down the line where it was, you know, there was anything positive in it. But through help and then suddenly get myself back on my feet, you know, it's crazy where I am a year on from now. There is times where the have spells where I'm not doing great, but at the same time, you know, I didn't think I'd be in the position I am now a year ago, or even further back when things were going tough. I was convinced that was the end, sort of thing. I think I was convinced, you know, I was a burden on people as well. That was one thing as well. I felt like a burden at times, just because of the way I was acting. I felt bad around the kids because of the way I was acting. I felt like I was going to project someone onto them and things like that. It was really strange. Yeah, it was like I felt like the way I was being was going to affect them, stuff like that. So, yeah, it was tough. But like I say, when I did get support, things changed quickly. But again, I've still got to manage myself as well in terms of, you know, not getting something too high or not getting too low at times. I think that's one thing that I've got to be wary of. And there's certain things for people, maybe they have crutches where they when things are not going great, they go to alcohol and things like that. I think that's one thing I did when I was at rock bottom. I just went straight for alcohol as a coping mechanism, make us feel a bit better. But I always made us feel 100 times worse. So that's one thing as well. I know it's the toughest thing to say when you're feeling as low as you are, is to stay away from any sort of substance that maybe makes you feel better for 5, 10 minutes, half an hour, a day. I mean, suddenly when that wears off, you know, it multiplies again. So from my experience anyway, that was not the answer. But like I say, I came through that. It was a horrible period. But I came through the other side of it. And like I say, anybody's in that similar situation, there is, it doesn't seem like it, but there is help. And it, you know, it's worth going through that anguish to get through the other side, because there is better days ahead. I think that's one thing I would say anybody going through it. You know, I think that's the last thing you think is anything further on down the future. You don't see it. You just see a black veil really, and it's hard to look
over your head.
Yeah, it's hard to look beyond that and hard to see yourself in a positive light and see yourself in a place where you can be happy. And for me, that was the one thing I couldn't see. But now speaking through it all and coming through the other side of it, it's the total opposite. The way I think now, I've got to be there for my kids. The kids need their dad. You know, I'm engaged to be married now. We've got a future with a beautiful woman to look forward to, and the kids. You know, it's things that you just they didn't see at that period of time. They always thinking about the negatives, how I would lost things, and how, you know, that was a horrible period. But there is, like I say, there is better days ahead.
See, when you look back at that time where you feel like I'm at rock bottom here, like I need to speak to someone. What is your initial, you know, because I can imagine it's quite difficult then to go and say, you know, but you probably get to a point where you feel like you have to.
Yeah, I mean, it took basically, I think the turning point for me was when I was like close to commit suicide really, and I think a lot of my family didn't know this was going on. None of my friends knew this was going on. I was there was a wee bit of relief once the fact that people knew what I was going through. And it's weird, some people say, you know, nearly a couple of years beyond those sort of periods, and still there's people go, how you feeling, how you doing, sort of thing, and which is great, but I feel like I've come through that now, and I don't need the sort of as much of that.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. I think you don't want to be seen as this person who's had this happen to them or anything like that. So it's weird.
Because it's you've had a career where you've had huge success. You're talking about playing against these guys at like Arsenal, playing in the Premier League, and then towards the end of your career, you're getting hit with injury after injury after injury, which is then affecting your personal life. And then you get to a point where you can't play anymore. What am I going to do now?
Yeah.
And it's almost like boiling point, and it's a combination of all that hits you like a ton of bricks.
Yeah,
and
100%.
You get to a point where, you say, I need to talk to somebody here. I need to fix this. So was it Back Onside that?
Yeah, it was Back Onside I spoke to first. And also got a lot of support from counsellors. And the one thing, it sounds weird, but you just even having a message there out of the blue when you're actually feeling all right, but it's all of a sudden there's a message or somebody's trying to get into contact with you. And knowing that you've got that support there whenever there's tough times, I think that does gives you a sense of relief to knowing that there's always somebody to turn to. Doesn't matter how hard it gets or however bad it gets, there is somebody there to speak to. I think that's one thing that me personally, maybe it might be the same with other people. I always felt like it was a burden if I was going to be, if I was going to tell somebody I'm going through this or anything like that. I always felt like I was being a burden. I felt like I was being a burden with mum and dad, my family and things like that. Whenever I had to rely on things, I felt like a burden. So knowing that there's somebody there who's, any minute of the day you're going to be able to phone or get support from, it's crazy how much it means. I know probably should use it more often when I was in that sort of stage. But again, you still got me being me. I felt like I was being a burden a bit. But they were there every sort of step of the way. Helped me massively. And yeah, it's probably one of the main reasons I'm still here, along with other support in terms of my family as well. So got them a lot to thank for.
I think that's why it's so important that we have, the podcast like this that we're doing, the Change Room Chat, and we can have open conversations about this, because football, everybody loves football. We watch it. There's a game on TV at night. We watch it. Nobody really knows what's going on behind the scenes with the guys and the women that are playing and the stuff that they're going on in their personal life. And when you have a career like you've had, which the majority of young guys at football clubs and who are coming through would kill for that career, but then you get to a point where you can't even look at that and see the positives.
Yeah,
that's scary. It's unbelievable to think that.
Yeah. Nah, I just, like I said, when I was in that state of mind, always thinking of the negatives, and I just felt that was the end of, it was the end of my career, but at the same time, I felt that was like the end of probably the road in terms of lost a bit of my identity. I think I felt as well. I was always known as a footballer. I was always, suddenly I almost felt like I didn't have a place anymore. It was weird. It took a long time to sort of adjust to that. It probably took me actually getting back working. I ended up, just after COVID, I ended up getting a job as sort of a labourer / maintenance worker. And it was brilliant. I loved it. It was really tough work in a pretty tough environment, but enjoyed the sort of, again, getting around people and being that sort of, I think that's one thing looking back as well, was I was pretty idle for a long period in terms of just did a wee bit of artwork, but it was pretty isolated, and I was just doing it off the cuff sort of thing. Never really had any schedule at all, and probably getting back into work and having that schedule again, having that sort of something to drive towards, certainly helped me again, just sort of get things back on track. So it's like the one message I try to get across as well when I was speaking about stuff like this was like try and have something to fall back on as a footballer as well. I think a lot of kids, probably even youngsters as well, I know somebody who was released from Dundee who's now just sort of fallen into the love of football completely. And it's because a lot of the pressures that go into the kids and stuff like that as well. I think it's, you know, it's quite difficult for kids these days, and you know, their parents are almost living the dream for them as well. They've got the added pressure. They always say to the kids, you know, the kids' parents and that, just let us do the coaching. Don't hear any voices and anything like that, because they've got a lot of pressure on them as well. I remember having that sort of pressure as a kid as well. I dealt with it okay, and I quite enjoyed that environment actually. Being in an environment where it's sort of life or death, sort of, that was actually gave me a bit of a buzz. That sort of tough environment, but for a lot of kids, it's pretty difficult. But the message for me is just always try and think of, you know, if you are playing, your career does come to an end. So it's when you're actually playing, you don't think it's going to come to an end.
I think it's going to last forever.
It's going to last forever, but it could stop sort of overnight. So the one thing I wasn't prepared for was sort of life after football. I just thought, I'll maybe get my badges and I'll do this and I'll do this, and it didn't work out like that. For me, looking back, I would have liked to got some training and maybe anything else, or it'd be great to stay in football, which is happening for us now because I'm back coaching, only part time, but it's just good to be a part of a club again and having that having that camaraderie and things like that. I enjoy that, and I work as well. So I've got a good balance where I can still, you know, get that euphoria on a Saturday of winning a game, or just being in and around the guys, having a bit of a laugh. You know, that does enough for me. It'd be great for me to get back. I'm still learning to coach. It's like coaching and football are two totally different things. I think a lot of players just think because I played football, I can go into coaching. It's totally different. Yeah, it's totally different. So I'm at a stage where I'm still learning, trying to get better.
Taking it a day at a time.
Yeah, taking it a day at a time. Don't look too far ahead. Don't get too high and don't get too low. I think that's one thing I've sort of taken on board as well over the last few years is, you know, because you get setbacks, and it's about not getting too low when you hit the setbacks as well. And when you get, you know, when you get the success as well, it's don't get too high because it can be short-lived at times as well. So you've got to be prepared both either way. For me, I think that's one thing I've taken in since leaving football as well. But if I had any sort of piece of advice for anybody who's playing just now or getting towards the end of their career as well, even, is to start looking towards, you know, what they're going to do, especially towards your 30s. If you're playing, I think that's a good time as any to try and maybe look at a different career, or if you still want to stay in the football, be proactive with your coaching badges, and you know, even if the club you're playing with as well, they're looking for help behind the scenes in terms of their youth teams or things like that. That's one thing I did a wee bit at Inverness. I got in about the youth teams and stuff like that. But I think as a footballer, it's important to try and, if you are looking to want to coach, and try and learn, try and be around people who are doing it. Because I think you take for granted. You just think, you know, it's going to happen. It's just going to keep. But yeah, that was sort of my story in terms of my difficulties leaving football.
Well, it's been amazing to chat. I know that he'd obviously spoke out a bit before about your story towards the end of your career and how much Back Onside has helped. I think that it's really important that we have this podcast and we have these conversations. And I just want to say thanks very much for your time.
Nah, it's been a pleasure. I know that hopefully that if there is anybody who's been struggling or, you know, just speaks out. I think there's no shame in it, and I don't think, certainly from your family and your friends, there's certainly no judgment. And I think everybody, if you are struggling, it's important to speak up.
Definitely. The last thing I want to say is Back Onside, obviously all the help that we do behind the scenes, we don't receive any, we're strictly on donations. We don't get any government funding or anything like that. So for anyone that is watching, then it would be amazing if we could have a bit of help. So thanks very much, Kev.